in the Canadian military, if someone wanted to get into the Joint Task Force too, what's kind of the steps for that?
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind me backing up just a little, Justin, I do like
Yeah,
to give a shout out to our ladies and gentlemen. Um, Despite what some might think, Canada has a very distinguished and rich military history,
definitely.
especially from the 19th century. We played big roles in World War One and Two. We were there the whole time in World War Two, the Korean War, and through many. I think it was like 35,000 Canadians became American citizens to fight in Vietnam. We were there financially in support. Um, Even the original Gulf War, we had troops there. Gulf War II, indirectly money and funding, and then eventually, once ISIS sparked up, we were there as well. Afghanistan, we've been an ally, not just to the U.S., but to an ally for good for a lot of the world, and um, we actually had a very big military after World War II and World War One. So we don't have any direct entry programs for our SF. We don't have like an X-ray program or whatnot. So you have to either become a reservist or a full-time member, and you have to serve 2 or 3 years, depending. And then you're able to apply to go down an SF route. Um, Statistically, you're most likely to make it if you've gone through either one of our other special operations route, like CSOR, because I'm specifically talking about Joint Task Force 2. Our CSORs, our Canadian Special Operations Regiment, a little bit, just for a placeholder, similar to your Green Berets. But really, being a paratrooper in the infantry is the best way to harden up your body and prepare yourself for these routes. It doesn't, I'll just speak to JTF 2s. We have a week-long selection. It's very scientifically calibrated to pick out character attributes and cognitive attributes, which we call like a neuropsychological test. It's very difficult. It is very hard. It's designed to twist your mind. Like it is difficult on your body, but the understanding is that you're already super fit. A lot of the fitness standards are, I don't want to quite say like Olympic in their levels, but they're extremely they're extremely high.
For sure.
And I should back up. There is some psychological testing done before where the ice cube is shaved. It's shaved a lot, actually. Thousands are shaved right off those tests. And then we have small numbers that show up, usually about 3 or 4 serials, about 30 dudes each. And, it's kind of got, at that point, about like a similar 7 to 11% pass rate or acceptance rate. It's because it's one thing to make it through, because you can make it through and not be accepted.
Yeah.
And then you go on to your assaulters course, which again is JTF2 specific. And it can vary. Some years they run a little bit longer. Sometimes they'll run stuff. They'll take like an insertion method and it's run at the squadron level, or it's tacked on to the course itself. So it can vary between, say 7 and 10 months. But it's the same stuff. You get the same stuff. And this one here, again, it's just constantly the bottom is chopped, and I was talking to this about with one of your SEAL Team 6 guys about the pressure that this creates, where you're like, you're like never really good enough. You just keep struggling. You're there. It really messes with you psychologically, but it's part of the point of it, right? Is to not only see if you really want to be part of these units, but to weigh your mettle. And we cover, hey-ho, other insertion methods, driving, pretty much not every single insertion method you can think of, like paramotoring and stuff like that you'll get to later on, like a little bit fancier, but pretty much your insertion methods, your survival, your evasion, resistance, interrogation stuff. Very important is basic and advanced CQB, kind of create the foundation of your operator. We certainly have world-class CQB. We're lucky too, we're tapped in with other great nations that have great military. So there's great information exchange there, a lot of lessons learned. Maybe the US has learned a lesson the hard way. We don't have to learn it the hard way, right? We get to incorporate that quicker. Same with the British and all the Five Eyes and stuff like that. And then it kind of covers 3 roles. Your green role, which is your traditional camis kind of soldier and in the bush, recon, that kind of jazz. Your black role, which is your counterterrorism roles, and then your gray role, which is, you know, source handling, plain clothes kind of stuff. Um, and that's one of the kind of cooler things about us. We'll do some, our mandate is national and abroad,
Mm-hmm.
unlike other militaries. So that gives us, sometimes I used to think of it as more of a headache because you have like this giant job description, and it can be hard, you know, to maintain a lot of skills. Like,
Yeah.
you know, when you have 100 skills you got to maintain, it's harder than maintaining 50 skills. So I don't know where they're at now. Some of those must have been mandated down to for like our CSOR regiment, but that was an education on its own. You know, once again, like we were saying, exposure to things. Like, I'll give one little story, just not like as if it's like a whoa, this is a crazy story, because it's not a crazy story, but it's just like one of those moments where you're like, huh, this is a perspective I haven't thought of. We were doing some subway counterterrorism training, and we basically used explosives. You know, all the windows were bashed in, every kind of insertion method on this sub that was going to be decommissioned. And then we're in the sub, lights are out, it's all blacked out, and we're riding it back to the main station where they're going to take it off the track and whatnot. But we're going through live subway channels, and people like this sub pulls up and it's got to stop just because of traffic purposes. And, you know, the sheep are all like, oh, and then they like realize like, okay, there's no lights on. It's just guys with guns and armor, and all the cars are smashed in. And it was, but you're driving along, and like, this is in Toronto, and it's like, there's a moment where I was like, fuck, man, nobody else gets to experience this kind of stuff. You know, like, that's just a little micro moment. Like, I could go on and on and on and on about those kinds of things where you're like, huh, it feels pretty cool. You know, this is an education that no one else can pay to be a part of. You have to earn this. And there's something about that earning a place in a small group, in a high echelon group, that is very, very rewarding.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. We just recently, a couple months ago, the 160th did some, their, what do they call it? The realistic urban training here in San Diego, and bringing in little birds and landing on top of some of the skyscrapers and stuff. And you see all the videos starting to pop up on social media. And that's one of those things where, like, if you were part of that, you're like, yeah, that was pretty cool. Like, that's pretty
just
sick.
To fly over a city in a helicopter, in an attack helicopter of any kind, is like, and on a low, you know, where you don't usually get that airspace, is like,
yeah.
Huh. And then to rappel into a building and then rappel down that building, and like, it's like, yeah, okay, most people don't get to experience this kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah, I totally space sometimes that most people have never even ridden in a helicopter, let alone some of the stuff we've done. And I'll talk about it, and people are like, fuck no, I would never get in a helicopter. And I'm like, what? Like, it's just such a, it's a one-off kind of experience. And unfortunately, like, with that, you know, there's with those one-off experiences, there's the craziness that comes with it. You know, with riding in a helicopter, sometimes you get to ride in a helicopter off a boat, which isn't as much fun. You know, it seems like a little sketchy when you're flying over the ocean. I don't know if you ever have, but I've been in a helicopter that we thought was gonna crash, and was like flying like all crazy, like it was about to crash. Luckily, it did not. But I know a lot of guys that have been in helicopter crashes and stuff like that. And it's like, oh yeah, like the average person has never even been in a helicopter. How could they relate to a guy that's been in a helicopter crash? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, let alone in a foreign country, with people shooting at you, and, you know, collateral damage, and all the little nuances.
Yeah, we kind of take for granted the cool stuff that we're getting to do while we're in the military. And I see a lot of guys that are just like, fuck the Marines, I can't wait to get out of the Army, you know, I hate this is stupid. And then they get out and they're like, oh shit, I fucked up. You know, like, I was actually having a good time and I didn't even realize it. Because you don't realize the opportunities that are being provided to you just seem like, oh, well, everyone here gets to do this, so this seems normal. But then you get away from the military, and then you realize, no, it's not normal that you got to go hike 10 miles and get paid to do it, or you go shooting all the time. And, you know, I don't know. It's just perspective, you know? It's all about that
one of the things the military could learn, though, is when people are having fun, they learn at a much higher rate. So they don't need the same kind of repetition as when they're learning under stress. Now, there's a time to learn in stress, and then there's a time to learn in fun. You know, especially for like the general like militaries, they could learn that lesson a little quicker. That it doesn't always have to be the fun sucked out of it to make you hard.
Yeah.
Like there's a time and a place. You can do a little bit of both. I think if they learned that a little bit faster, because like in basic training, it's
Yeah.
supposed to suck. You're not supposed to have fun.
Yeah.
But like if you're doing some other stuff that's already scary, we'll say like fast roping. You know, I remember the first time I swung out onto a skid to do some fast rope and stand on a skid doing 100 knots in a chopper, just soaking up the wind. Me holding onto a strap, holding the fast rope, and it's like, what the fuck is going on here? You know, like, and the objective's still up there. You know, it's crazy, right?
Death is a
There's no need
possibility,
to
like
be
for
a
real.
dick about it. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Like you said, with training, it's there, and that kind of makes it cool, right? It gives you that edge. It's a level of excitement.